All right, what's good, everybody? I just wanted to do a quick breakdown for this fight tomorrow night. Canelo Alvarez is going to be facing William Scull, and this is going to be for undisputed at 168. The fight is tomorrow on dazn pay-per-view. I believe the pay-per-view alone is $59.99, and if you had purchased it with the Ryan Garcia Rolly Romero card, the bundle will be $90. I think both of them separately is $60 a piece. Okay, here in America. All right, but the card tomorrow, I don't know exactly when the card tomorrow starts. I did check earlier. It didn't have an exact time when I checked, but I know the ring walkout time for Canelo and Scull is at 11 p.m. Eastern. Okay, I will be here live to cover the fight, and I'm actually gearing up to cover the Ryan Garcia, Rolly Romero, Fatal Fury card later this afternoon. All right, but I wanted to do a quick breakdown. This won't be long for obvious reasons, because somewhat of a mismatch in my opinion. All right, Canelo Alvarez is fighting to get his IBF strap back, which was vacated because Scull or School, whatever way you want to pronounce it, was his mandatory sometime last year, and Canelo didn't want to fight him at the time. He fought Edgar Berlanga instead, which made more sense because Berlanga was the bigger name, you know what I mean? And even though a lot of people didn't want that fight neither, because a lot of people wanted the David Benavidez fight, Edgar Berlanga was definitely a better fight for Canelo Alvarez, in my opinion, going into the fight than a William Scull. Scull hasn't really fought any notable names in his career yet. 32-year-old guy, definitely has the height, the reach advantage. He is the bigger guy, but that's never really stopped Canelo. No, Canelo has been fighting at 168 for some time now, and size has never really been the only factor in beating Canelo Alvarez, right? William Scull, 32-year-old from Cuba. Now, in these kind of fights, these kind of matchups here, where there's a huge underdog, I think they said Scull is like a 30-1 underdog or something like that on the weigh-in earlier this afternoon. I did get a chance to watch the weigh-in of the card, and they both made weight. Canelo looked like his normal self. Scull looked in good shape. But when I watched the weigh-in, they said something about him being a 30-1 underdog. Okay, I'm a little familiar with him because I did get a chance to watch some of his stuff last year when he was actually originally the mandatory for the IBF strap. And I watched his most recent fight against Vladimir Shishkin. I breezed through it today, just to try to look for things. I mean, I had already seen the fight before. The fight was very close. I don't even know if he really won that fight. But I think it was a really close fight. But from what I get from Scull looking at that fight, he's somewhat of a rangy fighter. He moves well. Has a decent jab. He's well rounded. But there was nothing that really stood out. I can't even really hold you guys. I'm looking for something that I think that he can use against Canelo. And again, the movement is there. I see the movement there, but Canelo has fought so many good movers throughout the years, and he was still able to get to some of these guys, and the very last, or one of the most recent fighters that Canelo had fought that was a really good mover was Caleb Plant. And from watching the William Scull, Vladimir Shishkin fight, to going to watch the Canelo Caleb Plant fight because of the similarities in the styles, I felt like from what I was seeing that Plant did everything better than Scull. This is, based on what I'm seeing in comparing these two fights. And when you look at Scull and you look at the fights before Shishkin, these are not high level fighters. A lot of these guys he fought were journeymen, so with all the fights that he has on his record, 23 professional fights, there's no one there that stood out. There's a bunch of highlights of him knocking a few guys out, but none of these guys are like world level fighters. Now, I did a little research on him, and I saw that being that he is a Cuban fighter, he has like somewhere over 300 fights, which is believable. As an amateur, a lot of those guys over there in Cuba and a lot of the Eastern European fighters and stuff, a lot of those guys they're gonna have hundreds of amateur fights. So can Scull pull something out and show us something different from what we see in his previous fight? Absolutely. You can't sleep on that. I mean, he would have to do something different for Canelo, because just moving well is not going to be enough. But from what I see in the Shishkin fight, things that would need to work in his favor, or things that he would need to do to make things work in his favor, is he can't just shoot the jab. He can't just throw a jab every once in a while, move, throw a jab. That's not going to work. You're going to need to be slippery. You're going to need to feint a lot. You got to do things that's going to throw Canelo's rhythm a little off. And not only that, but when you are against the ropes, when there's times where you're backed into a corner, you have to have that inside defense, against a guy like Canelo. Again, he's used to fighting movers. And when you're trapped against the ropes or in the corner, Canelo is great when, being that Canelo don't have the quickest feet, he's great at controlling, the fight on the inside once you're against the ropes. He's going to be using his lead. He's going to be using his forearms. He's going to be using his hand to control your head, and he's going to be throwing hard shots wherever there's an opening. His punch selection on those occasions when he's in range is top tier. We're talking about one of the greatest fighters of this generation. So William Scull is shooting a jab and throwing big right hands from the outside. And a lot of times I've seen, when I was watching the Shishkin fight, he's lunging, he's overextending. I just don't see how this fight can be competitive for Canelo. Outside of his obvious size, his distance, I don't know how durable the man really is. And then he's not really a high volume puncher neither. So even if he's not getting trapped and he's making somewhat of an effort in this fight, I don't see the volume. I don't see how he can win the rounds, by not being as aggressive. I thought his defense is really leaky on the inside. I seen where Shishkin, who was being the aggressor a lot more in that fight, I seen when Scull would try to tie up and I don't know if he even has the strength to really get Canelo off of him. And I didn't want to make this video about just bashing the man, because he is a good fighter, but I got to be realistic with you guys too. Canelo has fought so many fighters. I mean, I literally went through his resume and I was looking this as far as an opponent going into a fight with Canelo. William Scull is probably the least proven fighter that Canelo has faced since he's probably been a champion. You can make an argument, maybe not stylistically, but as far as experience as a pro fighter, he's probably got the weakest resume. And I remember talking about this fight, and I told you guys last year that most likely this fight will happen, because now that Canelo is not undisputed and there is a belt out there being held by another fighter, most likely Canelo is going to fight that fighter for that title, especially if he's going to go into a huge fight with Terrence Crawford later this year. And Scull is a champion because the IBF made him the top dog in the rankings. And I don't believe that his resume really shows that. I don't know why he's the top dog, based on what win, and a questionable win against Vladimir Shishkin. So the way I look at this fight going into the fight, can Scull survive against Canelo? It's possible. Do I think he could go to full 12? It's possible. Canelo's 34 years old. Um, he's getting older. He's got about almost 20 years of professional experience. He's starting to slow down a little bit. So, and the knockouts ain't coming like they used to. Okay, the knockouts it's been a while. Um, it's been a while. I have to really go down and see that the last stoppage was Caleb Plant. All right. Now he's knocked a lot of these guys down. He busted some of them up. I think he ended John Ryder's career because Ryder was not the same fighter. He's always been a durable guy. He wasn't the same fighter when he fought Munguia. Jamel Charlo ran the whole fight, and I don't believe Scull moves on a level of Jamel. And I think the other two fighters, Munguia is not a mover. He's a guy that comes straight at you. Edgar Berlanga was huge, even bigger than Scull is. Much bigger than Scull, bigger than Munguia. Edgar Berlanga was huge that night, and he gave a pretty good fight. But Scull, I don't see any advantages he has here. He would have to do something that we haven't expected, and I think when fighters fight at this level, I think they're going to bring the best out. So some of that extra amount of experience as an amateur might show up on that night. I don't know if Canelo's taking him lightly or not, but all I know is that from what I've seen from Scull, there's nothing that I've seen that made me feel that he can win this fight. And I think the likelihood of him getting stopped in this fight is more likely than what we've seen in more recent fights, because I just don't think that his movement is enough. Unless he really stepped up his cardio for this fight. He looked burned out in the Shiskin fight. Midway through, he looked like he was a lot more tired, and the punch output is so low. I don't know how I can even make an angle here on how he can win this fight. I can't even create one. There's fights where I think there's definitely a favorite, stylistically, but there's nothing that Skulls brings that's different from what Canelo has faced. And there's nothing that he's done that he does extremely well to me, that would cause Canelo to struggle. Unless it's just the right time, the right day, and Canelo's really slowing down. Again, Skull's going to use movement. He has a good jab, but he's not a power puncher. And again, he just doesn't have, I don't even think he has the cardio to deal with Canelo for that amount of rounds. I have been Canelo stopping him. I think Canelo's going to get his first stoppage that he has. I think he's going to get the first stoppage he's had in a long time here. I don't know when. I don't have any. I don't think did I put any money down. I don't think I might throw this fight in a parlay at some point, but I haven't done it yet. I'll let you guys know tomorrow when I'm live, and I will be live. But I have Scull getting stopped by Canelo. Unless he is going to pull something that we haven't seen, which is possible. But I haven't seen it in his pro fights. I don't know how he survives against Canelo. All right. So that's my breakdown. I have Canelo winning by stoppage. Please let me know what you think in the comments. And if you have a little bit more information or any more details about Scull that I haven't brought up, please bring it up in the comments. If you think Canelo has or Scull has more of a chance than I'm giving him, let me know in the comments. All right, I will see you guys on a live later today for Ryan Garcia, Rolly Romero, Devin Haney, Ramirez, and Tiafimo against Arnold Barboza. Peace.